So, what just happened last night? Well, before we get into this, what have I seen during the lead up to all this? So, I've seen different reports where dead people are being registered to vote. There was one guy in particular that had died in 2016 or 2014, and then he's being suddenly re registered to vote. How does that happen? More suggestions again about voting machine tampering. That seems kind of be a constant. And reports of Democratic vote fraud rings. Not to mention a bunch of reports on nefarious Democrat groups registering voters. The Lamestream media has done nothing but vilify Trump since the beginning. The Democrats have done nothing but talk about impeach the man before he was even in office and did much of anything at all. Then we have the migrant caravans coming up on our south border. We've seen reports that the Red Cross is supporting them. The UN has members there on the ground with them. Then you have Veritas, who has been doing a bunch of undercover videos concerning the little games that the Democrats play. Finding out that Beto O'Rourke and his campaign staff were evidently using funds in order to buy different cards, preloaded credit type cards, in order to support them. And then there's the links to Mr. Soros when it comes to the different groups that are involved with this caravan, not to mention his whole own website that talks about his investments into immigration and immigrants, and his donation supports to quite a few Democratic people running for office. And going back to the spin on Trump, I mean, do you know that he supports term limits for congressional members? How about the fact that he's called out the Fed? You hear much mention of the positive effects on our economy or the unemployment numbers. And I mean, we're talking all groups: Hispanic, blacks, women. Then Nevada hated the Democrat option for office there in the one area, the one district. They hated that option so much, they voted for a Republican who recently died during the race. Yeah. So, we've heard the whole red wave, blue wave. Some opinion pieces have been written and actually posted in some prominent papers on the blue wave being more like a ripple. What has, you also had media talking about the synagogue shooting, and again, the liberal left echo chamber, known as social media, and the majority of supposed news. talking about it being Trump's fault because of it. Now, they want to try and single Trump out for his supposed rhetoric, but, what about Eric Holder and We Kick Him? Or Maxine Waters, Mad Max? Look at how many people have ended up being hounded in restaurants just trying to have a meal and other things. There was also a Democrat in New York, which didn't receive much focus, that was going to build a bomb and go down and blow it up in D.C. Don't mention much about that stuff, though, right? Again, liberal left echo chamber with an agenda. They want to keep pointing your head in the direction of what they want you to see, while they ignore everything else. And I know many of you are too damn busy with life to actually go and dig into some of this stuff yourself. So, what we have is the makings for the better part of 2 years now, trying to make the president and the Republicans guilty by association. And this is part of what's responsible for some of the flips last night. Now, there are some that are upset. I mean, obviously we have liberals and Democrats and that on the one side that probably aren't all too happy about the idea that they didn't gain more control than what they did. Yeah, well, I get political opinion. It's not a lifestyle. That goes without saying. The point being is that there's people kind of upset on both sides, but the other thing, you have radicals on both sides as well. They like to point out the radicals on the conservative and right. Don't pay too much attention to the radicals on the other. But they exist on both sides. Again, it's just an example of the echo chamber. So, I'm not sure how many of you remember, but Trump, I think he tweeted, and I think there was actually some news coverage of this, where he'd mentioned about voter fraud and the fact that it would be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. So, with the way that things have been going, he's let the collusion investigation go. And the more and more you dig into it, the more and more you wind up finding out that it seems more like there was Democrat collusion, especially through Hillary Clinton, Uranium One deal, etc. Not much of anything really suggesting that Trump did much of anything concerning that. And then when you start looking at the warrants and how they were obtained and the lies that were done, the corruption within the FBI, it really does suggest a very large stranglehold by the left. When you have people that are lying to obtain warrants, for one, it's an issue. When you have people that are lying to protect Hillary, which has also come out recently, we have a problem. But I find it particularly ironic that Trump ended up tweeting, or that piece written concerning election fraud, with the things that I was mentioning earlier. So, if you are actually trying to clean something up, what better way to do it than keep an eye on things, draw attention to it, and then see who bites. And that's typical law enforcement. When you look at different things and some of these, failed bombers and stuff like that, you find instances where they actually, agents actually, kind of offered to supply. So I'm just a little curious to see how things go at this point. There are those that follow Q. There are those that believe it. There are those that don't. And I would suggest in that, at the very minimal, one thing that has taught us is to dig deeper, research, question. Don't just believe what the idiot box tells you. Unfortunately, you do a little bit of digging with this stuff where Trump's concerned, and some things that I mentioned that you probably haven't heard of. You get the idea that you're not always told maybe as much as you should have been told to form your opinion. And a large part of the reason you're not told more, you're not given the additional evidence, is because there is a desire for you to reach a predetermined conclusion. So you're given the information that supports that because of agendas. They leave everything else out that would have you thinking otherwise. Half-truths. So, what if that's exactly what happened? I suggest and would predict that. Keep your eye open over the next few days, weeks, month. I would not be surprised one bit with the way that things have been being played. That they did watch. That they have paid attention to every one of these claims, and some of them by local news broadcasting stations, locals. It doesn't always hit national. But the stories do wind up in the locals. And I'll bet they've been watching. I'll bet every one of them is looked into. And I will bet you soon, as has been suggested, the information concerning the FISA warrants will be released. The other ironies on that is given the fact that the Dems ended up taking the House at this point. Q had said before, FISA brings down the House. Could they have been anticipating this with the plans of keeping that eye on things, knowing what they would find, knowing what they would be able to prove as the result? Time will tell. The other thing to think about too, when you look at the midterms, what did Democrats win from the Republicans? What districts changed? What districts were Republican that went Democrat? Were the ones that were there really Republicans, or were they rhinos? If they were rhinos and they weren't doing what was right, stand to reason that it flipped, or it changed. Something to think about too. The opposite. What did Republicans win from Democrats? We have to learn to dig deeper. If you are naive to think that there are not rich, powerful, influential people that pay and do things to ensure things stay the way they want them to be or become the way they want them to be, you're lying to yourself. Happens all the time. Human nature. People like to try to maintain what they have. Now, a moral person does it the right way. But if you look at the attack on our morality here in this country, if you have any years of experience, it keeps sliding. One of the arguments that I ran into the other day had to do with the whole idea of voting. And there are those that think that it just legitimizes the system. And although that may be true, here's the thing. The only way to not legitimize the system would be for everybody to not vote. That's never going to happen. Because if nothing else, their minions will. And they will use it to justify the process. Here's the problem. Something obviously happened this last presidential election because, in theory, with the stuff that I see Trump doing, with the way that I have never seen supposed news bash and slam a president the way they do him, when I know about things concerning the Federal Reserve and the fact that Trump has even called them out on their bullcrap. When it is historically not done where previous presidents speak poorly of the then standing president. There's no way Trump is establishment. If he was establishment, there'd be no way in hell he'd be getting the smearing he gets. There's just too much from all angles. In that vein, something happened last election. Something helped to ensure that the people got what they wanted. And I'd be willing to bet you he baited them. And you watch. Stuff's going to come out about their little games. Just a thought. Something for you to think about.